All right, Jeff, we'll say good morning. Today's daf is Membeis. Our shir this morning is dedicated by Mr. and Mrs. Martyr in honor of the yahrzeit of Mr. Martyr's mother, Hinda Bas Aaron Yosef Zichron Livracha. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshama will have an aliyah and the family in Nechama. Thank you. We'll say also our shiurim this week are dedicated. She had a very beautiful dedication by Robert Lilienfeld in honor of his wife Lisi and her passion to inspire others to engage in acts of tzedakah. Quite a beautiful, beautiful. Looks like Dafyomi is a wonderful gift for birthdays, anniversaries, general hakaras hatov, all occasions. Beautiful. We'll say, let's begin. So we have a little bit of Gemara left to do. Today's daf is Membeis 42. We are picking up 41b. Right, Mem Aleph on the base at the last 4 lines of the daf. Zeh klal. So remember, again, we're making a distinction. In yesterday's daf, the end Mishnah about if a person goes ahead and shechts an animal as a karban. Right, shechts an animal as a karban, a chullin animal as a karban. What are the ramifications ultimately again of that shechita? So the Mishnah says it depends. It depends if it's the type of animal that could karban that could be brought as a neder or nedava. Then what? Then the halacha ultimately is that it goes ahead and invalidates the shechita. It's possible. Midrabanan, as we spoke about. But if it's the type of carbon which cannot be offered up as a neder or a nedava, then halacha lamaisa, the statement is simply invalid and meaningless. Ze'aklal. So the Gemara says, Ze'aklal la'asuyim avos. What does this come to include? La'asuyi olas nozir. I will say this ultimately comes to include an olas nozir. That if you shecht to the chullin animal, the shem olas nozir, that ultimately again such an offering, or I should say such a shechita will be possible. What would I have thought? Halo nadar. Right, after all, again, he never made such a neder nezira, so I would say maybe again such a statement is meaningless. Eimar neder betzina. Right, ultimately again say that he did make the neder, it's just not public. People don't know about it. I b'she'eno neder v'nidav la'asuyeh. So we'll say what does the case of something that is not nidra and nidav? What does that come to include? Olas yolades. We'll say that comes to include the ola v'yolades. Amar b'lazar lo shanu ela she'eno isha. We'll say that's only true ultimately again if he's not married. Aval yesh lo isha emar lishmahu osa. I will say that if he does have a wife, maybe he's quote unquote offering this animal on her behalf. V'halo k'amar l'shem olas ishki. I will say in the case then when he's not actively saying that this should be an ola for my wife, meaning there's no attribution. Rabbi Avo v'omer l'shem olas ishki. Oh, he's actually saying for the sake of an ola for my wife. So the Gemara said that's the case of Shita. That's obvious. Top of Membeis Mal with him. What would I have thought? I would have Rabbi say that if indeed his wife had given birth and he was now bringing an olas yoledes for his wife, that such a thing would have a call. People would know about it. To which the Gemara says, "Kamash malon emer apuli apla." We'll say it's possible that maybe she gave birth, but unfortunately, again, it was a miscarriage or it was a stillbirth. Where those circumstances occur, so halacha l'maisa again, it doesn't necessarily have the call of a birth, but at the end of the day, still carries with their carbonic responsibilities. Hadrin Allah chashochet. We'll say mazel tov. Now, time to begin a new parak, and now we're going to get into some of the technicalities concerning shechita, specifically shreifus. So we'll say, here we go. So we're going to talk about today's daf. We're going to kind of talk a little bit more in generalities. And in Mir Hashem, we'll get a little bit more into the specificities in the days to come. So let's go. Here the treifos for the hero. We'll say the following is a list of treifos. Now, a treifa means some type of problem with the animal, right? Something deficient, something missing, something injured, something broken. We'll see all different kinds of examples. Now I will say the idea being that if an animal is a treifa, that we are assuming that halacha l'maisa the animal is the animal is not kosher, right? That's what we are assuming here. That if the animal ultimately is a treifa, it is not kosher. So now we're going to go through the list. Here we go. Elu treifas bebehema. We'll say these are the treifas ultimately again in a behema. Now Rashi points out over here, elu treifas kol nekev b'mashahu. Rashi is going to say, although we're going to see that this is different by different things, but ultimately again a treifa could be even the smallest of holes in something. We'll see that varies from treifa to treifa. Let's go. Nukuvas haveshet So we'll say ultimately again, if there's a hole in the esophagus, upsukas hagargeres. Ultimately, I'm saying now, psuka literally means dislodged. If the trachea is dislodged, now we'll give technical thresholds for these things. Nikev krum shamoach. If the membrane surrounding the brain was perforated, or nikev halev lebeis chalalo, or the heart ultimately again was punctured. I will say to the point that the puncture extends all the way to the inner chamber. Nishbara hashedra v'nifsak achut. If the spine was broken and the cord itself was ripped, the cord itself again was detached. Nita hakavet v'lo nishtayir hemena klum. If the liver was removed and there's nothing left of the liver. Hareya shenikva. We'll say if the lung became perforated, we'll say, so that we're going to spend some time on, because very often again, when we think about treifa, specifically again non-glat meat, it's often the lungs which are problematic. We'll get into that. We'll say if the lung was perforated or was deficient in some way. The Rashi points out, the Gemara is going to discuss, is then not redundant, meaning obviously if the lung is punctured, then of course it's deficient. So we'll see that. Rabbi Shimon Omer, ad shetinokev lebeis hasymphonos. Rabbi Shimon says that the puncture in the lung is only problematic until ultimately again the puncture extends into the bronchi, right? That ultimately again the puncture has to be internally. Again, we'll say each one of these is going to get its own attention. Nikva hakeva, nikva hamara. So we'll say if the keva. So we'll say right now, because we're talking about behema, so the paradigmatic example of behema is like a cow. A cow has 4 different stomachs. We're going to discuss these different stomachs and the halachos of these stomachs. Keva Rabosai is one of these stomachs. So if one of the stomachs of the animal ultimately again became perforated, or nikva hamara, Rabosai mara is the gallbladder, right? If the gallbladder becomes perforated, nikva adakin, the intestines become perforated. Hakeres hapnimis shenikva. We'll say keres is another one of the stomachs, right? Which is one of the inner stomachs. If this is keres, the inner keres, right? The inner stomach became perforated. O shenikra rov hachisona. Or we'll say if the majority of the outside became torn. Ultimately, again, this is also a treifa. Rabbi Yehuda Omer hagidola tefach. So also Rabbi Yehuda says that actually Rabbi Yehuda says something very interesting. He says gedola bosai means by a behema gedola, by a large animal. Ultimately, again, it's problematic if it tears a tefach, v'hakitana, but by a small animal beruba, that it's only a treifa if the majority tears. Hameses, so I'll say meses ubeis hakosos. These are 2 more of the stomachs, right? Meses and beis hakosos shenikvu lochutz. So we'll say, so again, if either of these stomachs were perforated on the outside, so ultimately, again, this is a treifa. Now we'll say, this is interesting. Nafla min agag. If your cow falls off the roof, right? So we'll say, so again, so what's interesting about this it happens. It was whatever, right? It was probably alcohol involved, right? So we'll say, so understand, this is actually very interesting, because we'll say what this is introducing is a different kind of case. Up until now, all of the treifa cases have to do just with things we'll call internal to the animal. This case, I will say, is there's an external reality that ultimately again is occurring with this particular animal. So nafla min aguf. Nafla min agag. I will say now, if you look at Rashi for just a moment, nafla min agag, it's about 3 lines from before the intermediate wide lines. So nafla min agag, Rashi says v'shachta miyad treifa. This is actually very interesting. So the case of Naflam and Agag means what? So my cow's on the roof, cow falls off the roof. I will say, so Rashi's saying here, even if halacha l'maisa, my cow gets up, I mamish, I raise them well, right? It's jumping hurdles, it looks perfectly fine. I shecht it immediately. Rashi says the Mishnah still, again, we'll see this in the Gemara, but Rashi says it's still teaching me that halacha l'maisa, the cow is a treifa. The cow is a treifa, the cow cannot be consumed. Why? So we'll say ultimately again, Rashi's concern about over here is You don't fall off the roof without something happening. So therefore, even if the animal externally looks totally fine and unharmed, we must assume that some type of internal treifa injury occurred over here. So the Chiddush Shabbos says, we'll see, is that even the animal presents totally okay, nevertheless, halacha l'maisa it's considered to be a treifa. So, right, actually says, Shalach l'mos Moshe Sinai, and the Gemara, fine. So let's go weiter. Says the Gemara, Nafla min Agag, fine. Nishtabru rov tzalosel. Well, it's another interesting case. If the majority of the ribs of the animal are broken, now Rashi points out already, this is even without nefila. Just somehow the animal has some type of traumatic injury. The majority of the ribs are broken. That's a treifa. Drusas hazev. What's another interesting case? What if the animal is clawed by a wolf? Animal is clawed by a wolf. Rabbi Huda Omer, Drusas. So remember again. So the Mishnah indicates that Drusas hazev. Rashi says shehi. This is in the intermediate wide lines. 4 lines in. Shehika b'tziparnav umatel ba'eres v'sarfa. So we'll say ultimately again. So interesting. Apparently, at least according to the Mishnah, so wolves had some type of poison in their claws. And therefore, interesting, no? Right, so we'll say, so therefore the case over here is the animal is being clawed by the wolf. So Rabbi Huda says, well, it depends. He says, Drusas hazaev bedaka, udrusas ari begasa. So we'll say, we're going to see exactly how to read these lines. Rabbi Huda arguing on the Tanakama and arguing on the Tanakama, because Tanakama seems to indicate that any animal that is clawed by a wolf ultimately has the status of a treifa. Rabbi Huda says, no, it depends. It's the clawing of a wolf, right, of a smaller animal. Dak, Rabbi say, refers to a behema dak, a smaller animal, so that makes animal a treifa. For larger animals, Rabbi say, a wolf is not strong enough to make it into a treifa, but if it's mauled by a lion, that absolutely will make it into a treifa. Okay, so we'll say, so again, you begin to see a progression of cases, right? So again, you begin with the treifa cases which are internal to the animal. Then you go to the nafla min agag falling off the roof, which is like a circumstantial treifa. And then I will say you see external treifa details where one animal is being harmed by another, and as a result of that harm, the victim animal is now rendered a treifa. So let's see other examples of this. So drusas hanetz ba'of hadak, udrusas hagas ba'of hagas. So we'll say, for example, so if you have, I will say a nates, Rashi brings down this particular type of animal. He quotes over this animal. So we'll say, so generally, interestingly enough, these animals are often translated as these birds, large hawks and small hawks, or I should say small hawks and large hawks, right? So drusas hanes ba'of hadak. If a small hawk attacks a smaller bird, that renders it a treifa. Drusas hagas, a larger hawk, ba'of hagas, for a larger bird, renders it a treifa. So we'll say, so again, the idea being, again, we'll get into all of this, but the idea being that if an animal is attacked by another animal of prey, that ultimately will make the victim animal into a treifa. Zehaklal. We'll say here is the principle. Kol she'in kamo achaya treifa. So we'll say, so it's interesting. The Mishnah says, and this is actually quite fascinating. After giving all of these 3 different categories of treifas and all these different examples, the Mishnah essentially says anything, any situation or any reality through which an animal cannot survive renders the animal a treifa. So ultimately, again, whether that's an internal injury, a circumstantial injury, a predatory injury, if the animal cannot survive these injuries, then halacha l'maisa, the animal has the status of a treifa. Once the animal has the status of a treifa, then what? So though the Mishnah doesn't say this explicitly here, but what does that tell us? If the animal is a treifa, even if you shecht it with proper shechita, and it is alive through the course of the shechita, the animal is still unfit for consumption. One is not permitted to eat a treifa animal, as we will discuss. So says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. So I'll say, before we go ahead and we get into the details here, we have to develop some of the halachic framework and construct. So Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says, Remez l'treifa min haTorah minayin. I will say, from where do we find a scriptural allusion, a hint to the fact that a treifa is aser? To which the Gemara says, minayin? What are you talking about, minayin? Ubaser basada treifa lo sochelu. Well, so I don't need a remez, right? I don't need a hint. I don't need an allusion. What do I have? Even better, what do I have? I have a pasuk, right? Basar basadet treifa lo sochelu. If you find meat in the field that is a treifa, you are not permitted to eat it. Ela remez l'treifa shenachayim elatraminai. Oh, we'll say no. Gemara says that's not what we're asking. The prohibition on consumption, I understand. What I want to know about, say, is a definition. The Mishnah said that the definition of a treifa is any animal which cannot go ahead and survive its injuries, whether they are internal, circumstantial, or predatorial. I know it's not a word, but I like it, right? So we'll say, so ultimately, again, so how do I know that? How do I know that a treifa is an animal that can't survive its injuries? So diktani, well, the Mishnah said, zaklal, kol shein kamo achaya treifa. So I'll say, the Mishnah said, any animal which cannot survive its injuries is called a treifa. Michlal the treifa eina chaya. So I'll say, so the Mishnah kind of says it explicitly. So the fact that the Mishnah says, zaklal, this is the principle. Any animal which cannot survive is called a treifa, tells me that a treifa is an animal which cannot survive. To which the Gemara says, minalan. So ultimately, I got it. I understand the principle. What I'm asking for is there a pasuk that makes some type of reference to this? To which the Gemara says, yes. Dichsiv v'zos hachaya asher tochlu. This is the chaya that you shall eat. Chaya achol, an animal, so the Gemara is taking a little bit of like a little interpretation over here. Chaya achol, ultimately again, a chaya you are permitted to eat. She'ina chaya, but that animal which cannot survive, lo seichel, cannot be, because we'll say what the Gemara is a little bit of like a play on words. Chaya no longer just means an animal, but rather what does chaya mean? The type of animal which is able to survive, type of animal which is able to live, which teaches me that an animal which is not able to live, i.e. a treifa, cannot be consumed. Look at Rashi just a moment. Zos hachaya, second to last line on the daf, Rashi says, Zos mi'utahu, v'hachi mashma zos stam behemo shein chayos achos. We'll say, Rashi points out actually that the drasha is based on the word zos. Zos is a miyut. Miyut tells you this you can eat. The chaya you can eat, but other animals you cannot eat. What is it coming to include? It's coming to include animals which are alive. What is it coming to exclude? Animals which have some type of injury which will ultimately result in their death. So we'll say, so this michlal the treifa lo chayis. We'll say, so this teaches me that what? That a treifa ultimately again is an animal which cannot survive its injuries. So says the Gemara, uleman damer treifa chaya. But according to the opinion who holds that a treifa is able to live. So we'll say this is going to be machlokes in the Gemara. We're going to see whether or not a treifa is the definitional machlokes. Is a treifa the type of animal which could survive its injuries or not? That is a machlokes we will see. So according to the opinion who says that a treifa is able to live, so minalan, Rabbi says, so even according to that opinion, see everyone agrees that you can't eat an animal that is a treifa. What they argue about, Rabbi say, is definition. One opinion holds that treifa in a chaya, treifa cannot survive. The other opinion says treifa chaya. So I'll say, so according to the opinion who holds treifa in a chaya, so I learned that out from what? Zosa chaya asher toklu. There's a type of chaya, of animal you can eat. That's an animal which can chai, which can live, versus a treifa which cannot live, and you cannot eat it. But according to the opinion who says that a treifa can survive, so minale. So we'll say, where do I know that you can't eat a treifa animal? So nafkale mizos chaya asher tochlu. We'll say, we learn that from the pasuk of this is the animal that you will eat. Zosa chaya echol. This type of animal, i.e. a non-treifa, you can consume. Chaya achares lo seichel. A different type of animal you may not eat. Michlal, the treifa chaya, which I will say tells us that even though the treifa can survive as well, you're still not permitted to eat it. I v'idach haizos my avidle. So I'll say the opinion who holds that treifa eina chaya. What does he do with the pasuk of zosa chaya asher tochlu? We'll say he needs it for the teaching of the Tana de Rabbi Shmuel. The Tana de Rabbi Shmuel, because we'll say in Yeshiva Rabbi Shmuel they taught as follows: Zos hachaya asher tochlu. The pasuk says this is the chaya that you will eat. We'll say, what do we learn from that? This is actually amazing. Melamed shetafas hakodesh baruch hu mikol minumin vehera lo lemoshe. We'll say what I learned from that pasuk is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took from every single type of animal and he showed it to Moshe Rabbeinu. In other words, he took each animal, showed it to Moshe. V'amar lo, zos echol, v'zos lo seichol. And he said to Moshe, this type of animal you can eat, this type of animal you can't eat. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed Moshe Rabbeinu literally the halachos of kashrus with a hands-on demonstration. Ve'idach nami mi baile l'chei d'tana d'ber Yishmael. But I will say even the opinion who holds treifa chaya also needs this drasha. So if he needs this pasuk for this drasha, then where does he learn out his concept? Einachinami ela treifa chaya minale. So we'll say if he uses that drasha for the same thing, where does he learn out the concept of treifa chaya? Nafkale mi idach tana debei Rabbi Shmuel. He learns that, I will say, from another statement of the debei Rabbi Shmuel. The Tana debei Rabbi Shmuel, because they will say they turn on the yeshiva Rabbi Shmuel as follows: Bein achaya hane'echeles. So we'll say lo seachal. So we'll say so. The pasuk says lahavdil ben atame ben atar ben achaya hane'echeles u ben achaya asher lo seachal, to distinguish between the chaya which can be eaten and the chaya which cannot be eaten. So we'll say, what does this refer to? Eila shmona esrei trefos shene'emru l'Moshe misinai. I will say this refers to the 18 trefos, which were said to Moshe Rabbeinu at Har Sinai. So therefore, I was saying this is a raya ultimately again to the fact that a treifa, even if you hold that it lives, you're still not permitted to eat it. Good. So we'll say, so again, a couple of takeaways over here. First of all, everyone's agreeing that what? Good news, can't eat a treifa. There's a machlokes, although this is not where it's taking place. It'll take place in a couple of dapim. Ultimately, again, about treifa chaya, treifa ein chaya. Can a treifa live? Can't a treifa live? But I will say, but for our purposes, that doesn't change the bottom line. Whether a treifa live or a treifa can't live, one thing is clear, which is you can't eat it. So even if you shecht it properly, you are not permitted to eat it. Machlokes as to where everyone is learning everything out from. Now I will say the Gemara just opened up an incredible, like a Pandora's box here, which is, the Gemara just said that based on this pasuk, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is teaching Moshe Rabbeinu the 18 treifas. There are 18, I will say 18 different disqualifications for treifas. So the Gemara says, 18, the suleka, are there no more than 18 treifas? Here we go. V'ha'ika baskar. We'll say about this Baskar, of course. I forget about Baskar. So we'll say Baskar is a mnemonic. Beis, Samech, Gimel, Reish are going to represent 4 additional new forms of treifas, which we will discuss. Furthermore, V'shev Shmaisisa. And I will say, furthermore, there is another 7 that are brought down in the rabbinic teachings. So we'll say, the Gemara says, you're making it sound like halacha l'maisa, all there are 18 forms of treifas, but it's pashat not true. There are other forms of treifas as well. So let's analyze. Amud Beis, we'll say, here we go. So here we go. Bishlam latana didan ditana tana v'shir. So we'll say asya bezakla. So we'll say, so the truth is, remember again, our Mishnah lists 18 treifas. The problem now that the Gemara is making it as asking is what? You're making it like there are only 18 treifas. It's not true. What about Baskar? Whatever that means, we'll discuss it just a little bit. And the additional 7. Right? So we'll say, again, remember, Baskar is 4, additional 7, so there's another 11. So the Gemara says, for our Mishnah, the fact that there are additional treifas, that's not a problem. Why? Because we'll say, how does our Mishnah end? After listing 18, the Mishnah says, Zehaklal, Kol Shen Kol. So whenever you see a Zehaklal always comes to what? Includes something more. So that's fine. We'll say the way our Mishnah reads beautifully. What our Mishnah is doing, we'll say, is listing 18. And saying, of course, this is not an all-encompassing list. There are other forms of treifas as well. But obviously, we can't go ahead and quote every single form of treifa. Therefore, halacha l'maisa, again, we're quoting some of them, recognizing that there are still more to be quoted. So the Gemara says, "Ela Tana Devei Rabbi Shmuel." So Bishlam Tana they done the Tana v'deshir. So say our Tana left some things off from the Mishnah. Asya bezaklal, but the zaklal kind of is a what's the right phrase? All catching. All encompassing. I'm sorry. Catch-all. Thank you. Catch-all. Right? There's a catch-all phrase that catches the rest of them as well. Says the Gemara, Ella l'tana debei Rabbi Shmuel. But I will say again, ultimately again for the Tana debei Rabbi Shmuel, damar yud ches treifa. So we'll say, but here's the problem. So remember again, Tana debei Rabbi Shmuel explicitly said that what? There are 18 treifas. So we'll say, here's the problem. If you say 18, 18 means what? 18, right? And if you're not following up that 18 with a statement like a zi'akal, a catch-all phrase, then you're stuck. So what's the current time of Rabbi Shmuel? So So again, you're telling me that there's 18 and no more, but it's not true. And now the Gemara is going to show us that there are some additional ones. For example, V'ha'ika behima shenechtechu ragleha min ha'arkuva ulemala. So we'll say, for example, this is actually very interesting. If you have an animal whose hind leg is cut off above the joint. So we'll say, so apparently, treifa. Apparently, again, I will say that animal is considered, which is so interesting, because I think for many of us, when we think about treifas, amputation of limbs we wouldn't think falls into the treifa category. We're going to discuss this more in depth. The problem over here, I will say, is the extent to which the limb is amputated. Remember, again, we're going to see a difference at the joint versus above the joint. So over here, if the leg is cut off, the hind leg is cut off above the joint, that is a treifa. So we'll say, so already off the bat, that is not included in. Remember again, Tanat Rabbi Shmuel will say Tanat Rabbi Shmuel, his 18 is our Mishnah. The difference is our Mishnah adds in a phrase zaklal. Tanat Rabbi Shmuel is not adding in an example, a phrase zaklal. So here, there's a 19th. There's a 19th cutting off the hind leg above the joint. So what does Tanat Rabbi Shmuel do with this? To which the Gemara says Tanat Rabbi Shmuel savrlek Rabbi Shem ben Elazar. Ultimately, again, so we'll say the Tanat Rabbi Shmuel will hold like Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. This is amazing. What does Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar say? The Amar yicholihi lekavos v'lichios. So we'll say it's actually amazing. So Rabbi Shimon says that type of injury doesn't automatically make the animal a treifa. Why not, to both say? So remember, lechavos literally means burn, which means what? You can cauterize the wound. If you cauterize that wound, the animal will live. So this is actually quite amazing. So we'll say, so apparently again, what Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar will say, and ultimately Tanat Rabbi Shmuel as well, which is the only thing that makes you a treifa is a type of injury for which there is no recourse. This type of injury, although if left untreated, the animal is a treifa, because there is a relatively easy remedy and treatment, the animal's not a treifa. So the Gemara says, to which the Gemara answers, but one second. So we'll say, but one second, even if that's true, that the wound could be cauterized, and therefore the animal ultimately, again, can live. Remember again, who are we talking about? The Tanat Rabbi Shmuel. We'll say this is according to the Tanat Rabbi Shmuel. And remember again, the Tanat Rabbi Shmuel will say to begin with, the issue of treifa is not that the animal is going to live or die. Why? Because he holds Tanat Rabbi Shmuel treifa chaya. Listen, remember again, the Tanat Rabbi Shmuel is already on record as saying that although a treifa is not fit for consumption, Rabbosai, a treifa animal can live. If that's the case, the treifos that we're discussing are not issues that the animal will die. He holds the animal will live. So the Gemara says, Ella savrla Rabbi Shimon Elazar da Amar ksheri. Rather, I will say what you have to say is like this: that the Tanat Rabbi Shmuel holds like Rabbi Shimon Elazar, who holds that when an animal has its hind leg cut off above the joint, that animal is not a treif at all. That animal is totally kosher. So we'll say, so again, just to understand what we're trying to do over here. We have a statement that said there are 18. Tanat Rabbi Shmuel said there's 18 treifas. To which the Gemara says, not true. There's basgar, there's the additional 7. So again, remember, that doesn't pose a problem to our Mishnah. Why not? Why not? 2 words. Zaklal. Zaklal is the catch-all phrase. Tanat Rabbi Shmuel poses a problem because he said 18, which sounds like 18 and no more. So now Rabbi said the Gemara is going to bring up additional cases of treifas. What's an additional case? Hind leg cut off above the joint. That's a treifa. Tanat Rabbi Shmuel is not including that. To which the Gemara essentially answers, well, says that what? Tanat Rabbi Shmuel holds it's not a treifa. That's actually not a treifa case. Where does he get that from? Reb Shimon Elazar. Reb Shimon Elazar will say is of the opinion that such an animal is a kshera. And I will say whether or not these shitos are linked. So again, we'll get into this. It could be that Reb Shimon Elazar is saying. And actually, look at Rashi. Reb Shimon Elazar b'tosefta katanila hachi Reb Shimon Elazar machshir mipnei shechola likavos v'lichios. So we'll say, remember again, Reb Shimon Elazar's logic is only time an animal becomes a treifa, is when it is an injury that has no we'll call it medicinal recourse, right? Where there's no way to heal it. But something which can be healed relatively easily does not make the animal a treifa. If you cut off the hind leg above the joint, we'll say this, you never know when you need this piece of information, right? Ultimately, again, the wound could be cauterized and the animal is safe. Therefore, not a treifa. Fine, we dodged that bullet. Next. Va'ika chisaron b'shedra. And I will say, now we're going to get into basgar. So remember again, this is the samich of basgar, chisaron. This is the samich of chisaron. Va'ika chisaron b'shedra. I will say, but there is the case of a deficiency in the spinal column, in the spinal cord. So I'll say ultimately again, this not, because we learned kama chisaron b'shedra. We'll say how much of the spinal cord has to be missing in order for the animal to be considered a treifa. Beishamai omrim shtei chulios. I should say that differently. How much of Osai? This Mishnah is not talking about treifa. This Mishnah is actually talking about tumas ohel. So again, we're not going to get into the technicalities over here, but kama chisaron b'shedra, how much has to be missing from the shedra in order for it to be considered deficient? Beishamai omrim shtei chulios. Beishamai says 2 vertebrae. Beisila omrim chulya achos. Beisila says even 1 vertebrae. V'amar Rav Yehuda Shmuel v'chim l'treifa. It was Rav Yehuda said in Shmuel that the same machlokes over here by Beishan and Beisila when it comes to tumas ohel, but this is what's important for us, also applies to treifa. So according to Beis Shammai, ultimately again, if an animal is missing 2 vertebrae, it's a treifa. According to Beis Hillel, even if it's missing 1 of the vertebrae, it is a treifa. So what do you see from here? Here you go. So this is the samich of baskar, right? This is chisaron. So what do you see from here? Missing vertebrae is a treifa. They're both saying this is not listed in the Mishnah. This is not one of the 18. So remember again, here you see Tanya Rabbi Shmuel, you're telling me there's only 18 treifas. Pasha Natural, I've just shown you a 19th. And we'll say, as opposed to the previous case, we have people who disagree with this, everyone seems to agree that this is indeed a treifa. To which the Gemara says, calm down. Hameses ubesakosos dekachashavta lehu betarti chashvinu bechada. We'll say, watch this. This is great. So meses and kosos, we'll say, which are 2 of the 4 stomachs. So remember again, if any of the stomachs are perforated, we'll say that's a treifa. In the listing of the 18 in the Mishnah, what we did is we broke up the stomachs, right? So if the meses, which is one of the stomachs, is perforated, that's a treifa. If the besakosos, which is another one is perforated, that's a treifa. Instead of listing meses and kosos as 2 different treifas, do what I will say, condense them into one category, right? Stomachs, we're going to see you can't condense all 4 stomachs into one category. It's reason we'll discuss. But at least meses and kosos, you can condense into one. If you condense that into one, guess what I will say? Then what? 17. Then I only have 17. And perfect. Spinal column becomes the 18th. Beautiful. So chashvinu bechada, apik chada, that takes 1 off the list. Va'ayil chada, and you could put 1 more in the list. So we're still maintaining numerical integrity to the number 18, and I would say all we've done is we've condensed 2 stomachs into 1 and ultimately put the spinal cord case in. Beautiful. Gluda. We'll say, what about gluda? Right, so we'll say this is the gimel of baskar, right? Gluda, we'll say, means like Rashi, vika gluda, shenita ora, v'hofsheta kula. We'll say it's actually an animal that's been skinned. So interestingly enough, apparently an animal which has been skinned ultimately is a treifa. Rashi says, "Shenitla orava hofshata kula omachma shchin omachmas malacha." So watch this. So galuda. So we'll say, so what do you do with an animal that's been skinned, which at least is reckoned according to some as a treifa? Sarvala krab meir d'machshir. We'll say ultimately again, very simple. Tana Rabbi Shmuel holds like Rabbi Meir that such an animal is not a treifa. Skinned animal is not a treifa. Skinned animal is kosher. Next, v'oiga charusa. So we'll say. So ultimately, again, what about charusa? Look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says, charusa, diktani masnisin, ve'eluk shers ve'charusa b'dei shamayim, ve'tan b'dei adam treifa, ve'ezo hi charusa, kol shet samka reya shala. What's like a withered lung? A withered lung. V'neskash kechario shal dekel. What's like it's called charusa because the lung becomes shriveled and becomes hardened like a palm branch. So ultimately, again, va'iga charusa. So we'll say, so what about the case of the withered lung? Is that not a treifa yet? It's not included in the case of the 18. To which the Gemara says, okay, I'll tell you what we do over here. Mara. We'll say, let's go back for just a moment. One of the 18 was the gallbladder. right? A missing gallbladder, a deficient gallbladder. So Mara man katani. I will say who included the case of the gallbladder? Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. That was Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. Apik Mara va'ayul charusa. Take out the case ultimately again of gallbladder, and instead put in the case of the withered lung, right? So take out a gallbladder, give me a withered lung instead. Rashi says, take a look at Rashi, 4 lines into the intermediate lines. Mara man katanila. Ultimately, again, the truth is, the gallbladder just snuck in there. The gallbladder doesn't really belong there because not everybody agrees with that. So take out gallbladder and put in what? Put in withered lung instead. Okay, very nice. So essentially what you've showed me is you could take care of basgar. Okay, what about v'ha'ika shev shmaisisa? But what about these other 7 that are mentioned? Now we don't know what those 7 are. What about those other 7? So the Amar Rav Masna, hai buka de itma de shafmi duchte trefa. But 1 second. There's another case. What's this other case? The ball of a thigh bone. The ball of the thigh bone which pops out at its socket. That also renders the animal a trefa. V'amarachish bar pavim mishmei derav laksa b'kol ya'achas trefa. We'll say another example. If an animal has kidney disease, right? Something happens to even one of its kidneys. That ultimately goes ahead and renders it a treifa. Utnan, another example. Nital hatchol. The spleen was removed. Aval nikev treifa. But if the spleen was perforated, then what? The animal is a treifa. V'amra barachana amra b'shmuel simanim shenedaldelu beruban treifa. But let's say the siman. This we actually made reference to this. The siman are the kana of the veshet, right? The trachea and the esophagus that became detached in their rove. The majority became detached. It's a treifa. V'amar rabba bar Rav Shila amar Rav Masna amar Shmuel ne'ekrat sela me'ikara treifa. I will say if a rib became detached at its base, the animal is a treifa. Vigulgoles shenechabsa beruba, or I will say a skull that was crushed in its majority. Ubasar hachofes rov hakeres beruba treifa, and I will say for that matter, if the flesh surrounding most of the stomach ultimately became torn, ultimately what? It's a treifa. So we'll say, so again, what's the point? What are we doing? We're rattling off 7 additional cases of treifas. So we'll say, so again, we're back to the same problem, which is our Mishnah is not problematic because you have Zaklal, which is the catch-all phrase. Tanad Rabbi Shmuel, who says 18 and no more. Okay, you managed to somehow avoid the basgar issue by essentially swapping out certain things and including others. But what do you do with the Shev Shmaisasa, right? What do you do ultimately again with these additional 7? To which the Gemara says, okay, I'll tell you what you could do. Nikuve tam niyahavu chashvinhu bechad. So we'll say, I'm going to give you a very simple example. The Mishnah, right, I should say in the list of the 18, I will say, there are 8 cases of perforations, right? 8 cases where perforation ultimately again becomes a treifa. I'm going to give you a simple answer. What do? Condense 8 into 1. Condense 8 into 1. And I will say, essentially, what is the Gemara suggesting? Instead of creating individual cases, create categories. Create categories. This way, I will say you could maintain numerical integrity. So take all the cases of perforations, make it into one category. You've condensed 8 cases into 1. What happens if you condense 8 cases into 1? What have you just freed up? 7 slots. And I will say, beautiful. Nekuve tamne have chashvinu bechad, apik shev va'ayil shev. Ultimately, again, all you need to do is what? Go ahead and halacha lamaisa. You just freed up 7 spaces and include the additional shev shmaisisa. Ehachi psuke nami trehavu. Chashvinu bechad. Oh, a second. Now you have a problem. Because now if you're taking out individual cases and condensing them into categories, then what? I will say there are 2 cases ultimately again of things which are detached or cut. Go ahead and condense those 2 things into one case. I will say I have a problem, which is what? I'm missing something. V'od drav avira mishmei derava nami nekuvihi. Furthermore, again, I will say ultimately again the case of the Rav Avira, which I will say was the case of the perforated spleen, is also a case of a perforation, in which case it should be included in the perforation category. And therefore, I will say, in fact, I may be missing what? 2 spots. Top of Mem Gimel. Elahanach tarti da'afkis lo safik. Rather, says the Gemara, ultimately, again, those 2 that you removed before, I will say, which 2? Which 2? Number 1. Rashi says, Behema shenechtechu raglaha. Number 1, I will say, the case of the hind leg, which was amputated above the joint, as well as the geluda. I will say the geluda means the skinned animal. Don't take those cases out. Instead, put those cases back in. Then what I've effectively done is what? I've condensed the categories, put back in the case of geluda, put back in the case of the amputation above the joint as treifa cases. And Baruch Hashem, what do I have? I have 18. We'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up top of Megillah Hashem tomorrow.